Welcome to the Synagogues of the Ukraine, Part 4. The area we're focusing on in this episode is now called Lviv, but the old-time Jews used to call it Lvov. So we'll refer to it as Lvov. We've been looking at what was called the Golden Rose Synagogue, or in Hebrew, the Turei Zahav Synagogue. It was completed in the late 1500s and the Nazis destroyed it in 1941. The man who financed it was a moneylender to the Polish king at that time. This is a close-up of what is left of the Holy Ark, or in Hebrew, Aron HaKodesh. The famous Taz, or Rabbi David Halevi Segal, prayed here in the mid-1600s. The synagogue was designated a World Heritage Site in 1998. There is hope to one day rebuild a facsimile of the synagogue at this location. In 2008, a Jewish-themed restaurant was open in the area. However, it generated complaints of racism by the local Jewish population because the owners of the restaurant gave out black hats and fake payas or forelocks to diners to make them look like old-time Hasidic Jews. And there were no prices listed on the menu because they said Jews like to bargain anyway. The next Lvov shul is the Jacob Glanzer, also known as the Hasidim Synagogue. It was built around 1844. These words in Hebrew read Tzedakah Gedolah Matan B'Seser, which translated means giving charity is much better quietly. In other words, don't know who you're giving the money to and don't let the recipient know who they took it from. The Nazis did not destroy this synagogue, but Stalin and his Soviet suppression did extensive damage to it in the late 1950s, early 1960s. Since the return of the property to the Jewish community after the breakdown of the Soviet Union, it has been used mostly as a Jewish cultural center. The outside walls were repaired around 1990. By the way, Lvov is in the western part of the Ukraine with about 720,000 residents. We're now looking at the Tzari Gilad Synagogue, also known as Beis Aaron v'Yisrael. That translates to House of Aaron and Israel. This synagogue was built in 1925 and also survived World War II. Tzari Gilad was the name of the Jewish charity organization at that time. It was built to accommodate a little less than 400 people. The Nazis used it as a horse stable and the Soviets used it as a warehouse. The Jewish community took it back in 1989 after the fall of the Soviet Empire, and it's been renovated every few years. This one was called the Great City Synagogue. It was built around 1800 and blown up by the Nazis in 1943. During its glory years, it was the main synagogue with many of the adornments from the Golden Rose or Turei Zahav Synagogue transferred to it after the other one became outmoded. This one was called the Temple Synagogue, which is a little redundant. It was located in the old fish market square. Its construction was completed in 1845, and the Nazis obliterated it in 1941. Its memorial plaque identifies it as a progressive Jewish synagogue, which would be similar to what we've also called a choral synagogue. Part of what made it progressive was the positioning of the ark, the pulpit, and the pews, as well as the rabbi speaking in the local rather than the Yiddish language. Our final stop in Lvov takes us to what was called the Great Suburb Synagogue. It too was destroyed by the Nazis in 1941 and was not rebuilt, but a commemorative plaque was placed on a building next to where the synagogue stood. Completed around 1630, this synagogue was really a compendium of several small synagogues ensconced on its ground floor. There was the Menachem Synagogue, the Zochei Tzedek, the Melamdim, and two others. Each of these related to either the type of work or social groups the worshippers belong to. This concludes our look at the synagogues in the city of Lvov, Ukraine. More Ukrainian Jewish houses of worship to follow. So, see you soon.